go back to your analytics, get it set up 100% now, understand what questions you need to answer and what data points you need to answer them. And then ultimately start using the Explore reports and really start to create that better data narrative and storytelling and do it in a scalable way for you, but works for your businesses and clients. Hi there, my name is Dan Taylor, and this is SEO in 2026.
And what's your number one SEO tip for 2026?
For me, in 2026, as SEOs, we need to actually start understanding Google Analytics 4, Adobe Analytics, our analytics platforms a lot better, and actually starting to leverage those, not just for attribution and ROI of what we're doing, but also how we can look at our strategies and also second order effect of what our organic strategies are bringing to businesses.
It feels that SEOs saw GA4 coming and then put their head in the sand and thought, I'm not going to be a master of this. Let's not focus on analytics so much now. Is that fair?
I feel it is not necessarily that we put our heads in the sand, but it was a very different model. We'd grown accustomed to something. We'd grown used to a way of reporting and then bringing in like user events and other kind of event types and really mixing that up. I feel there was a lot of opportunity lost in just what could be set up with the analytics models itself. And it gave us greater scope, which, we probably did want to divert attention to data analysts and away from SEO in the actual setup of it, because it was like relearning a completely new skill, which realistically, you don't always get paid for analytics. It's seen as a given in terms of like performance reporting and understanding of data. So it's a heavy investment into a skill set, which you don't get a direct return on necessarily.
And I guess analytics is even more challenging nowadays with the changing user journey, with many users consuming content elsewhere and not necessarily having full visibility on when they do that. So what does that mean for attribution and being able to actually tell which referring source matters?
Absolutely. I think it's always been kind of a long-running joke in most marketing channels. And I think Marketunist did a really good kind of little cartoon of this a couple of weeks ago prior to recording this of a relay race. And you had the three relay runners, long-term brand building, SEO, everything else there, and then handing over to last click attribution to take it over the line. That's always been a problem SEO's had. It's not been something to ignore. And as you said, people are becoming more multimodal. We're consuming information, we're engaging with brands, we're researching across not just Google and LLMs, but TikTok, Instagram. We're consuming in different ways, and the journey is definitely not linear, and we're not stacking queries in the same way. And that's been compounded by an increased awareness of online security. So people are more aware of what cookies are, they're more aware of clicking different kind of banners and different elements like that. People may not necessarily understand the partners and sharing the cookies, but again, that is becoming more privacy focused. But that's a narrative some companies are starting to push, definitely.
Okay, and I mean, is it possible to use some kind of attribution model to give a sense of what the likely value is going to be on consuming content off your website?
No, definitely. So I think overall, we want to be looking at not only just the direct attribution of channels, so speaking specifically about organic, because people may have multiple touch points with your brand. They'll be researching, they'll come back direct, different elements. So what's important is we actually understand how we can use analytics effectively, and which is why I mentioned things like second order effect. So if content and our efforts are surfacing us in organic, or we're being surfaced through an LLM, and then we can actually understand, well, that user's coming to us first through organic, then they're coming back to us a few times in old analytics. This was assisted attribution, and you can see that quite nicely. It's a lot more complicated to set up now with Explore reports in GA4. But actually understanding, well, okay, this user eventually converted through, I don't know, a social display ad. But the only reason they have that social display ad is because they've interacted with the site previously 5 times through organic, through direct, and that's how they got the cookies. So it's more of an ecosystem now, as opposed to directly looking at individual channels and looking at the direct ROI of individual channels, just because the user journey is becoming messier, therefore channel interactions becoming messier.
Is it becoming harder to actually encourage stakeholders and businesses to spend significant money on organic because it's harder to measure the value of it? And is it the case that people are more likely to gravitate towards paid search because of that?
I think that's an element of it, because paid search obviously has that if you put £1, $1 in, you get X return kind of element to it. And that's how that model's always been set up. That's how paid search has always been sold. You've always looked at ROAS, you've always looked at very specific financial metrics. Whereas I think, especially with organic right now, there's a lot of uncertainty because there's a lot of hype from non-specialist publications. There's even a lot of differences of opinion within the SEO industry itself, with different thought leaders echoing and amplifying different messaging. And I think that level of uncertainty is affecting investment, because people want to be sure of their investment, and we can't even, like LLMs.text is a great example. We as an industry can't even agree ourselves what we're going to do with it. So we're expecting stakeholders who don't have a level of expertise we do, who have the purse strings, to make committed investments. And this is where I think understanding GA4 better, understanding how we can use audience insights, how we can use second order effect attribution, and basically just paint better data pictures that can create that confidence in actually what a modern organic program looks like.
Amazing. Okay. And in terms of an analytics platform like GA4, what are the key reports or areas that SEOs need to be diving into that they're missing at the moment?
I think the explore section of GA4 is one of the most underused, underrated, underutilized parts of it, because I still think we're quite eager to put things into Looker Studio and just manipulate the raw data. Whereas through Explore, you can actually create some very powerful insights into your businesses. And each business, depending on different objectives, will have different needs, but the data's native, it's quite manipulatable into visualizations you want. And you can actually get some really good insights into, like using second order attribution, into how many touch points users are making before converting, performance timelines. You can put together the Sankeys of drop off from different pages, and then you just overlay that with your other data. So if you can understand why people are going to page X, they're then going from page X to page Y, we can understand that journey, but then why they're dropping off from page Y to page Z, is there a reason for that? And you can actually then start to go, well, maybe the objective isn't to go from Y to Z, but that data insight can actually say, actually, I need to take them back to X and convert them there. It's better understanding about user journey, because we've always looked at it as the funnel, and a funnel is very linear, but now we're quite multimodal, it's messy. We've gone from a straight line to spaghetti almost, and we need to amend our data analytics to be better with spaghetti, I guess.
And I guess you're talking about cooked spaghetti as well.
Oh yeah, overcooked. Definitely not al dente spaghetti.
So in terms of funnel exploration, that's a great starting point, certainly, but it still sounds as if it's a tough area for an SEO maybe working by themselves in an organization to go into, make sense of, because they need different skills there as well, don't they, to think about user experience, why users may be getting put off by a certain page, trying to determine if there's additional content that could be required or other elements that could be added to a path. I mean, should an SEO operating in a rather fairly silo manner, or in a digital marketing role by themselves, be expected to do that by themselves?
So I think this then comes down to expectation management with clients. There's a lot of pre-built tutorials and pre-built reports out there which you can easily implement onto GA4 now. And if you're working by yourself or you're working in silo, it's very much about picking your battles and choosing what's going for. If you want to try and scale the entire mounting of the analytics and do all this on your own, even before the complexity of multimodal, before the spaghetti got cooked, it would be very difficult from a time management perspective and actually doing everything else. So I very much look at this and saying, right, how am I what are my clients caring about? How can I influence this? Even going back and using older, more traditional business methods like pestle analysis, what outside factors are going to affect this that I can bring to the forefront and educate my clients on, and starting to create that narrative of what the next, 6 to 12 months and potentially longer looks like, and using mechanisms online, because there's a lot of really good GA4 tutorials, guides, everything online to draw this experience on, but you can actually do this in a manageable way for you. Yeah, the realisticness of doing everything all at once is just not possible. Even for some small teams or large teams, everything has to be done in a phased manner. But it's just understanding how you can phase that and prioritize for your client and your workflow.
So you also say that by analysing these journeys, we can show organic's role in driving assisted conversions, nurturing awareness and amplifying the effectiveness of other marketing channels. So what would be an example maybe of another marketing channel that SEO can amplify, and how does an SEO go about producing a report to demonstrate that that's what's happening to a stakeholder in a business?
Say, for example, with organic, a lot of content we produce, we'll say, right, we're going to aim at top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel, or something like that. If we're quite prominent top of funnel, and that is being top of funnel content we're producing, we're targeting, is surfacing in the traditional blue links, it's being surfaced and cited in AI mode, AI reviews, and it's getting that engagement, that's a brand touch point. So if that's how we're first introducing the user, and we can see this through GA4 Explore reports, as long as the windows are set up and everything's set up correctly beforehand for like cookie expiration, etc. And then they come back to us directly a couple of times. They may then decide to follow the brand on social. They may also then engage by email and sign up to the newsletter, because when they come on the site, there may be that nice pop-up, sign up, get 10% off, whatever, the standard elements. They may then convert through email from a different campaign 2 weeks later. Now, the actual last click attribution, direct attribution, goes to email, but the actual reason why they're on that email newsletter send list in the first place is because they discovered the brand through a first touch point through organic. So whilst organic technically hasn't driven that conversion, it's enabled that conversion. Now, the other way of arguing that is, well, the user could have found and had a brand touch point through many, many other things. But this goes to like, well, they could have seen a TV advert, they could have seen an out-of-home advertisement, with different elements, but we don't have the attribution levels or the data to show that. So it's kind of going to the old, and depending on which school you follow this, I think it was Jamie Wanamaker, who I attribute this quote to, who founded Macy's. And he said 100 years ago, something like that, I know that 50% of my marketing isn't working.
I don't know which 50%. Yeah.
And so we're in that kind of messiness, but if we've got the data to say, right, they definitely came through this blog post, this guide, this X, Y, and Z, and then they converted 5 weeks later through an email campaign, and it's that same user and it's the same cookies, the same journey, that gives us an idea, well, people are still discovering us through this channel. So if that's in that aspect, it's the upstream value of the conversion of organic. And then maybe other ones where it's influencing LLMs, bottom of funnel, middle of funnel kind of conversations, different elements like that. It's a lot more messy right now. And it's a lot more nuanced and qualitative, and requires more data analysis than the old tables of, here's how many sessions you've had last month, here's how many new users, here's how many conversions, here's how much revenue, because it's just much messier.
Okay, so those are a couple of things that an SEO could be doing with GA4 to enhance demonstrating the effectiveness of what they're working on. But I guess you look at many setups and you think, that's shocking, that's terrible, you should have done this. Well, what are one or two big mistakes that you see with regards to GA4 implementation at the moment?
From a lot of the analysis I've done and studies, especially kind of like around LLM conversions of different things like over the last 6 months, the level of, for me, the biggest one's key events. Either people, and because by default you have a certain number of key events in GA4, key event bloat, which is where people are setting up everything as a key event. So I've looked at data sets anonymously, God, that's difficult to say, through Looker Studios, where you've had 103% of your sessions have had key events, and it's like, oh, that's because somebody set up a scroll depth as a key event as opposed to a user event, or people haven't made use of the key events properly. So then when people are asking questions of like, oh, well, how do we, like, I don't know, C-level stakeholders are asking questions of a website, it's, well, we don't know. because on that initial setup, no one's kind of done an audit of what do we need this data to say, what could this data potentially answer, and how do we track it? Because Universal Analytics, let's be honest, you had some custom events and you had enhanced e-commerce, and it was relatively simple. Whereas out the box, there's so much more manipulation and data you can see from GA4 that necessarily hasn't been invested in, because I think because analytics has always been free, analytics is seen as free, and it's not and any investment's just seen as a sunk investment and not necessarily valued in that way.
Dan, what's the key takeaway from the tip you shared today?
My key takeaway would really be to go back to your analytics, get it set up 100% now, understand what questions you need to answer and what data points you need to answer them, and then ultimately start using the Explore reports and really start to create that better data narrative and storytelling, and do it in a scalable way for you that works for your businesses and clients.
Dan Taylor is partner and head of innovation for SEO and AI at Salt Agency. Find out more over at salt.agency. Dan, thanks so much for being part of SEO in 2026.
Thank you for having me, David.
I've been your host, David Bain. Get your copy of SEO in 2026, the book, over at SEOin2026.com.